Welcome, Fantasizers. I'm Anthony Bravo,
And I'm Nicholas Logan.
and we're your Big Fat Fantasy coming to you live for week 2 fantasy football advice. We're going to be giving you picks, we're going to be giving you fantasy concerns, and our week 1 stars, and our Thursday night football picks for this Thursday.
Yes, sir. So we'll start off with our last week Thursday night picks from our last episode. Bravo hit all of his. I was unfortunately wrong. I tried to go more on the sleeper side.
I went more on the safer side,
Yes.
more obvious side.
Yeah, so one of my first picks was Dawson Knox, who only had one catch for 5 yards, only 1.5 fantasy points. But to be fair, there wasn't any tight ends that did that well that were drafted high. Kyle Pitts didn't do so well. Mark Andrews didn't do well. Obviously, Kelsey, he does well all the time. But, I mean, right now, O.J. Howard's sitting at the number 2 tight end. Taysom Hill's the number 3. But, yeah, I was wrong with Dawson Knox. Was not a good week for him or any tight ends, for that matter, that people drafted. And my next pick that I was wrong about is Matthew Stafford. Only threw for 240 yards, 1 touchdown, and 3 big interceptions. Only 7.8 fantasy points. Now Matthew Stafford sitting as the ranked 30th quarterback in fantasy. So another pick I was wrong about. And the only pick I was right about was Cooper Kupp, Matthew Stafford's favorite target from last year, leaving right off the same foot to start this season. Cooper Kupp, 13 receptions, 128 yards, and a touchdown. 31.8 fantasy points, and he finished as the wide receiver 1 last season, and he starts the season off as the wide receiver 2.
Yeah, Cooper Kupp, it's kind of an obvious pick, but, I mean, at the same time, he's the only guy there. Allen Robinson, he's going to take some time to get accustomed to that offense, and it definitely showed. It seemed like Cooper Kupp was the only one that Stafford had chemistry with. So it was tough for every other receiver besides Cooper Kupp, definitely. And we're going to be going on to my picks. I'll just start it off with Cooper Kupp as well because I did choose him as well. I believe I projected him to go 20 to 25 fantasy points, and he went off for 31.8. So surpassed my expectations for sure. Yeah, this is going to be the guy for this year for sure. He's going to be like, you know how Kelsey is in KC. Like, there's no other option. He's going to be that guy.
Yeah, I believe so.
And second pick was Josh Allen. I projected him to go 25 to 30 fantasy points, and he surpassed it by 1.4. He scored 31.4, 26 for 31 completions, 3 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. And, yeah, man, like, this guy's the best quarterback in the NFL, bro.
Just like Cooper Kupp
Yeah,
is the best wide receiver and lived up to it. Josh Allen, the best quarterback, and he lived up to it.
Yeah, he wasn't too impressive on the rushing side. Actually, yeah, he was. He had 10 rushing attempts, 56 yards, and 1 touchdown. So he could do it all, man. He's less faster than Lamar Jackson, but he could still
He's bigger,
do
though.
things that Lamar Jackson does. So. And then my third pick, kind of a sleeper, but not really a sleeper anymore, Gabe Davis. 4 receptions on 5 targets for 88 yards, 17.6 yards per target, deep balls, and 22 yards per catch. So, one touchdown, 18.8 points. So, yeah, in case you were scared about, putting Gabe Davis into your flex spot, I really don't think you should be scared anymore. This guy has week-to-week, fantasy upside.
Yeah, from here on out, he's definitely
yeah.
going to be the wide receiver 2 over there.
Yeah, for sure.
And Stephon Diggs did his thing, but Gabe Davis right behind him. So that was our week 1 Thursday night picks. We're going to try to come with you guys every show before the Thursday night games with picks, and then on our Saturday show, give you Sunday and Monday picks. So we know we didn't have an episode this last week. We apologize, but yeah, we'll be there this week. And then moving up to our next part 2 of the show. Just something that kind of stood out to us week 1, something that, we want to kind of talk to you guys about. I'm going to start it off by saying 2 things that really stood out to me this week, Michael Thomas and Saquon Barkley. Both had big week 1s this past Sunday. Starting off with Saquon Barkley in week 1, 33.4 fantasy points. He had 18 rushes, 164 yards, a touchdown, and he was averaging 9.11 yards per carry. And he caught 6 of his 7 targets for 30 more yards and had a big 2-point conversion that sealed the win for the New York Giants and their new head coach. That 196 total yards of offense for Saquon Barkley. And yeah, Saquon Barkley, he's missed some time the last 2 seasons. But before that, he was the number 10 running back in 2019. And in 2018, he finished as the RB1 overall. So if he can get back and stay healthy and on a week-in, week-out basis, he will definitely be right back in that top 10 conversations for the best fantasy running back. Moving on to Michael Thomas now. The guy I was not very high on in drafting this year, but had a very convincing week 1 with 22.7 fantasy points. He had 5 catches on 8 yards. 5 catches on 8 targets. Not a lot of yards, only 57 yards, but he did have 2 big touchdowns in that win over Atlanta. Michael Thomas, another guy as well, missed some time the last 2 seasons, and when he was healthy, he never finished below the wide receiver 7 in fantasy. So that's why Saquon and Michael Thomas both stood out to me, because they had big week 1s, and if they can continue to that, they can get back to the type of players they were in 2019 before their injury-plagued seasons the last 2 years. So if you have them, start them week in, week out, as if it was 2019 all over again.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm gonna be moving on to my week 1 stars. I'm gonna start it off with Jahan Dotson. He had 3 receptions for 40 yards, but he had 2 touchdowns in his first game as a rookie. So Jahan Dotson, somebody I wasn't really high on during preseason, but they're saying he has the best hands in the draft. So, and we clearly saw it on week 1 where he did that little toe tap touchdown on the second touchdown. So, yeah, definitely a lot of upside for Jahan Dotson. And I'm gonna move on to Carson Wentz, another player I wasn't really high on during preseason. He went 27 for 41 for 4 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. 27.72 fantasy points. It's against Jacksonville, probably one of the worst defenses in the NFL. And I think this is just, a lucky game. But if Carson Wentz could keep up this production, then, good for you. You probably snagged him after the 10th round. So.
Or you can get him on waivers
now. Or you can get on waivers now, yeah, if you're not in a super flex league. So Carson Wentz definitely on the waiver wire radar. And another guy I was wrong about, Miles Sanders. Miles Sanders went off for 18.5 fantasy points, 96 yards rushing, 7.3 yards per rush, and 1 touchdown. I was just assuming that the Eagles were going to run a 3-back committee with Boston Scott, Kenneth Gainwell, and Miles Sanders. And Kenneth Gainwell did actually score a touchdown. I believe he had... Yeah, he had 11.2 points, 1 touchdown for 20 rushing yards, but Miles Sanders the obvious standout. And if the Eagles could keep up, there's this good running back play, then I don't see him moving down the depth chart at all.
Yeah, and Jalen Hurts looked super good in week 1. I think he had the most accurate passes trying to move the sticks up the field in week 1. So if he can throw the ball, it opens up the run game for his running back, especially with the way he can run the ball as well. So
yeah,
something to look out for. But yeah, those are 3 guys you said you were wrong about. My 3 guys that I was wrong about in week 1, that went off this week 1. The first, Cordarrelle Patterson, a guy I was not drafting at all. A guy that we talked a lot about, Tyler Algier, all preseason, and saying how much we like Tyler Algier. But if Cordarrelle Patterson can continue to do what he did in that week 1, I don't see Algier ever touching the field. Cordarrelle Patterson, 120 rushing yards, 1 touchdown on 22 attempts. That was good for 5.45 yards per carry. And he finished with 22.6 fantasy points. So a lot of people thought that Cordarrelle was going to be kind of like that receiving back, but he only had 16 receiving yards as opposed to his 120 rushing yards against a very good Saints defense in week 1. So wrong about him. Another guy I was wrong about that I wasn't really high on the radar, guy who got a big contract, top 20 richest wide receiver in the league right now, Christian Kirk, 17.7 fantasy points. No, it's not too good. He's right now not a wide receiver 1, but he is, I think, the wide receiver 22. But he did have 6 catches on 12 targets for 117 yards. So he's going to be the main wide receiver in Jacksonville, a guy that that they like a lot. Obviously, they paid him the money for it, and if he has a touchdown within those 6 catches and 117 yards, you're looking at a 23.7 fantasy point game. If he has 2, you're looking at more. So, he didn't get that touchdown, but a guy to look out for, a guy that I was wrong about that really stood out week 1.
A guy that I was wrong about as well.
Yeah, so Christian Kirk, I know a lot of people drafted him. He probably got him made late. But I mean, if he can continue to put up numbers like that on a week-to-week basis, he'll finish as a wide receiver 1 this year. And my last guy that I was wrong about probably wouldn't have the fantasy output if it wasn't for Brian Robinson's unfortunate injury. But, yeah, Antonio Gibson had 20 fantasy points. He had 14 attempts for 58 yards and 7 receptions on 8 targets. And I was good for 72 yards, so 130 total yards of offense. No touchdowns, but Antonio Gibson, the guy that I really wasn't drafting, I was really high on Brian Robinson. Like I said, he's injured. But if Antonio Gibson can continue to put up numbers like that and hold on to the ball and not have any fumble concerns, I don't see why Washington would then go and then just put Brian Robinson right in the backfield and have it be a committee.
Ruin his flow.
Yeah. They won't ruin the flow, especially if they're winning games like they are now.
Yeah.
With the way, like you mentioned, Carson Wentz and Jahan Dotson, if they can continue, like that team could have a lot of fantasy appeal. I know it's week 1. A lot of times week 1s are flukes for the good players that didn't do good. It could be fluke for players that did good. They won't do good again. So, but just 3 guys that stood out to us each that we're wrong about before the season. So
yeah. And then I'm just gonna talk about a little bit of fantasy concerns. 2 players on my concerned radar are gonna be T. Higgins and Devonta Smith. T. Higgins, of course, suffered an injury, and I believe it was the first quarter.
He had a concussion.
Had a concussion. He still had 13 yards per catch on 2 receptions. But my advice to you is if you can pick up Tyler Boyd or trade for Tyler Boyd. While T. Higgins is out, be my guest. Tyler Boyd is going to eat while T. Higgins is out. I don't really know if he's going to be out for just 1 week or 2 weeks, but I just know Tyler Boyd is going to ball out while he's out. So
yeah,
that's concern number 1. Concern number 2, Devonta Smith putting up a goose egg.
Yeah.
In every single category except targets. I'm not too concerned about this. It's week 1. Jalen Hurts was obviously had more chemistry with A.J. Brown and, Goddard and guys like that. So I think, maybe he just missed Devonta Smith this game. I wouldn't be too concerned about it. I still see Devonta Smith as, at the very least, a top 20 wide receiver.
Yeah.
So, and then, just a team I would be concerned about is going to be the Tennessee Titans. Derrick Henry, I believe he only had 21 rushes for 82 yards, no touchdowns. And Ryan Tannehill, man, he didn't look like Ryan Tannehill. He looked like Ryan Leaf. Yeah, dude. He his targets were totally off. After halftime, I was kind of thinking like, where's Malik Willis?
Yeah.
Yeah, he just had a really bad game and not much fantasy appeal for the wide receivers as well. So definitely a concerning team for me. I'm very highly concerned about the Tennessee Titans right now.
Yeah, especially a team that's going to run first. If, Derrick Henry, if he's still not the same after that injury and he's getting 22 carries, only 82 yards, no touchdowns, it's going to be hard for those receivers to get open because their offense is revolved around Derrick Henry. So if he continues to struggle and Tannehill continues to struggle, you can see Malik Willis go out there in no time. A guy who can also run with the football extremely well. People say they remind him a lot of like a Lamar Jackson type quarterback.
Yeah.
So if they need to change it up, I would look for Malik Willis. Start looking up for him on your radars just in case.
And also, I believe PPF has the Titans O-line rated as like bottom 20. So
yeah, they used to be like top 10 O-lines in the league. So
it's not looking good for Henry.
Yeah. And speaking of teams that are concerning, especially a team that's always had a very good O-line and this year doesn't look good, is the Dallas Cowboys, a team that I would be concerned about as a fantasy owner owning them. I know we had them as one of our Tier A teams before the season started, but injuries to Tyron Smith before the season started. They lost their left guard, Connor McGovern, so they're running with 2 backup O-linemen with really not a lot of experience. A team that the Cowboys, we've known they drafted O-linemen very high, and they've always been, just try to surround their offense around their O-line. That's why Zeke's always been a top fantasy contributor. That's why Dak's always been the top fantasy contributor. The Cowboys, they've always revolved around that O-line, and now they're banged up. And not only is that O-line banged up, but now Dak Prescott's going to miss 1 to 2 months with a thumb injury, just had surgery.
O-line's probably the reason why Dak got injured.
Yeah, exactly. And they got, a lot of holding calls, a lot of plays were called back. Just was a very sloppy game for the Cowboys. Didn't score 1 touchdown in week 1, the only team in the league that didn't score a touchdown. But I'm more concerned on the fantasy appeal, not because the Cowboys don't have Dak. I'm more concerned that their O-line is just that banged up. Because like Cooper Rush, yeah, he's coming in. I know a lot of people, don't really know the name Cooper Rush. I know they're saying Cowboys might trade for Jimmy Garoppolo. I've heard the name Colin Kaepernick. We hear the name every year. A quarterback gets injured, we hear Colin Kaepernick. But I don't care who's behind there. Even if Dak's behind there, they're not going to be a successful team with that O-line banged up as it is. So, I mean, Cooper Rush last year when he took over one game when Dak was injured, he didn't have a bad game. They won week 8. It was week 8 against the Vikings. They won that game. He threw 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, and had 325 passing yards. So not a bad game for a backup quarterback. And even that game, CeeDee Lamb, who's now the wide receiver 1 in Dallas, he had 112 yards on 6 catches, which was good for 17.2 fantasy points. So I think if Cooper Rush can go in there, he's going to look for CD. Obviously, a lot of times you see backup quarterbacks come in. They like to target that main guy. They're not going to really trust the other receivers. But CeeDee Lamb needs to have a way better game than he had this last Sunday, where he only had 2 catches on 11 targets. Not promising at all. But like I said, the Cowboys just watch out because that O-line is just banged up. And I don't know how good Zeke's going to be able to do behind that O-line with his age. How good can Pollard do behind that O-line? They might have to use Schultz a lot now for blocking more than to go out there and make catches to help out with, defensive fronts. But just a team that I'm very concerned about, not only because I'm a Cowboys fan, but as a fantasy owner, I would be very concerned. Same with the 49ers, another team that I'm concerned about. Not injury concern. I mean, they did lose George Kittle week 1. He's a little banged up. Elijah Mitchell's now out for the next 2 months. And Trey Lance did not look good at all in week 1. And we talked about the Cowboys not having a touchdown. The Niners only had a 1 touchdown in week 1 against a Bears team that are projected to be the bottom of a barrel team this year. And Niners lost. And Trey Lance, I know they brought back Jimmy G. I think Trey Lance's leash is very short. I think next week, this coming week, they play Seattle. If Trey Lance has another bad game and the Niners can't win that game, I don't see why the team doesn't go back to Jimmy G, a guy that led him to the Super Bowl a couple years ago, a guy that was in the NFC Championship game last year. They like Jimmy G. The team trusts Jimmy G, I feel like. The players trust Jimmy G. I know he's not a big fantasy quarterback, but he gives relevance to guys like Debo or Elijah Mitchell or George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk. But with the way Trey Lance plays, if he can't beat another bottom of the barrel team in Seattle, it's to be a lot of concern. A guy I know, Trey Lance, was coming into the season as the QB7. Now, a lot of people drafted him probably early and now not looking too good. And if you drafted Elijah Mitchell, who do you pick up in that backfield? Do you go and pick up Jeff Wilson? Do you go pick up Davis Price? Do you go Jordan Mason? I know with the Niners, they keep their leashes short over there. They're gonna keep the leash short on Lance.
Whoever goes off is who they're going.
Yeah,
with.
Whoever goes out, they're gonna. So if Trey Lance's bad game, they might just throw Jimmy G in. He has a good quarter. That's their new quarterback. Yeah. That's the way the Niners play it.
That's Shanahan.
Yeah, they're gonna play it the same way with their running backs. If Mitchell's out for these next 2 months and any of the backups come in and take over, when Mitchell's healthy, they might not even run him back out there. We talked about the flow. They're not gonna ruin the flow of the team, and especially They drafted Trey Sermon last year in the 3rd round, played 1 season, and Mitchell took over the backfield, a 6th-round pick. Trey Sermon's not even on a team anymore. They don't care about getting rid of running backs and bringing in undrafted. Jeff Wilson, an undrafted rookie. Jordan Mason, an undrafted rookie. I feel like right now they're going to go Jeff Wilson. They talk about Tyrion Davis-Price, Jordan Mason. Could be any of those 3, but if none of them produce, Mitchell comes back, the backfield's back to being his. And they're also going to run with Debo a lot, so there's a lot of question marks on that team. A lot of short leashes that you really need to keep your eye on, with the Niners a lot this year.
I'm sadly an Elijah Mitchell owner, so
yeah,
I'm in that sticky situation where I don't know what the hell is going to happen.
Yeah.
So
who do you pick up? You
Yeah.
know? Like they said, it's gonna be Jeff Wilson, but he has one bad game, one bad
Yeah.
fumbles the ball, and they throw
TDP.
They throw in Jordan Mason. I said undrafted free. They love those undrafted.
Debo.
They love those undrafted players.
I feel like Debo might just take a majority of the rushing snaps.
Yeah, they might make Trey Lance run a little more.
Yeah.
He doesn't show any promise with his arm, but like we said, the Titans, Cowboys, Niners, just teams with a lot of fantasy concern after week 1, headed into week 2.
Yeah. And yeah, so that's pretty much gonna bring us to our 3 picks for this Thursday night's game. Mm-hmm. You want me to start it off?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm going to go first pick, my guy, Justin Herbert. Chargers are playing Kansas City this Thursday. I got Justin Herbert as my number 1 Thursday night projection. He's against KC in 4 career games. He has a 108.3 passer rating. 1,130 passing yards, 10 touchdowns to 2 interceptions, and he's averaging about 27.27 PPR fantasy points. So that boy hates KC. Yeah. He's always going off against them. But also, another guy that goes off against us is Travis Kelce, who's going to be my number 2 fantasy projection this week. Last year in week 15, he scored 41.4 fantasy points against my Chargers. That was a very sad game for me. He walked it off against us in overtime, and that was just kind of the downfall. Travis Kelce has been tight end 1 in 6 of the last 7 years, so this dude's a dog.
He already started this season off as the favorite to be the number 1 tight end as it is. So.
And as you know, there's no clear number 1 wide receiver in KC as of yet. You know, they got Juju, they got MVS, they got McCall Hardman, and then they got Sky Moore. So it's definitely a toss-up over there, but I got Kelce definitely taking a majority of the target share. And, yeah, I see him having a really good game. And then, so for these picks, we're going to do 2 obvious picks and then 1 sleeper pick just so, you know, we're not too obvious every episode. It's going to be Gerald Everett as for my 3rd pick. He kind of had a good week 1, 14.4 fantasy points on 18 yards per catch. And, you know, the Chargers have no Keenan Allen on Thursday. So he's gonna his target share is going to go up as well as Mike Williams. But, yeah, I just see Herbert connecting with Everett a lot on Thursday.
Yeah. Everett had, like you said, he was the number 1 probably fantasy player for the Chargers last week. He's probably like the tight end 5 right now, possibly.
Yeah, I believe. Yeah.
Tight end 3 or 4 or 5. So if you can continue to build a chemistry with Herbert, especially like you said with no Keenan, then yeah, it's a good sleeper pick. He's probably on a lot of waivers right now, or a lot of people might have him as their backup tight end. But I would feel comfortable sliding in Gerald Everett if I had him. If I don't have like a top tight end that I'm really comfortable with, I would definitely slide in Gerald Everett.
Yeah, for sure. And, you know, KC's defense is not the best either.
Yeah. So, moving on to my Thursday night football week 2 picks. I'm going to start off with Mahomes. He started off with the quarterback. I'll go on the other side, and I'll pick Patrick Mahomes. Not as good as a career against the Chargers as Herbert has against the Chiefs, but still very, very good. He has a 96.3 passer rating, 1,827 yards, 16 total touchdowns, only 5 interceptions. And that's good enough to average 21.8 fantasy points. I think he's going to have another big game. He had a huge game week 1. I know, like a lot of people, he looked like it's Josh Allen and it's going to be Mahomes and it's going to be Herbert, those 3 guys. And Mahomes, even with the wide receiver question, still threw 5 passing touchdowns.
Yeah.
And 2 of them were to my next guy. That's my week 2 pick, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. A lot of people were not high on Helaire. I'm a big Helaire fan. I'm really pulling for the kid. I mean, LSU is one of my favorite colleges, so I have a soft spot for those guys that went to LSU. And I know he was kind of sharing the backfield with Pacheco, but on the receiving end, I think Clyde Edwards is going to continue to be a big guy that Mahomes is going to target in the passing game. He's going to target Kelce, and like you mentioned, all the other receivers over there. I think Clyde's going to be battling for a lot of those targets share, I think, and little check downs and in the red zone inside the 10. You saw it in week 1. He had 2 touchdowns, 22.4 fantasy points. So just a very good week for Clyde. I know a lot of people probably had him on their bench. I had him on my bench this last week. I'm putting him in my starting lineup this Thursday without a doubt. So Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I guess he would kind of be like my little sleeper pick. Either him or kind of Mike Will. Mike Will had a horrible week 1. I think only like 2 fantasy points. But I think with no Keenan, I think he can have a big game. It could have just been a fleek week 1, and I think Mike Will is going to pop off this week. So Mike Will, I know a lot of guys were drafting in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round, and probably a lot of people were upset with his fantasy output this last week. But don't write him off yet. Put him in your lineup. Start him. I can see him having a big game, especially with how good Herbert does against the Chiefs. He's going to be, I think, looking towards Mike Will a lot this game.
Yeah, just wanted to make a note. The stats I gave for Justin Herbert against KC was in 4 games, and the stats that Nick gave for Patrick Mahomes was 7 games.
Yeah, so a few more extra games he has over Herbert. But if within the next 7 games, once like Herbert hits those 7 games, his stats will probably be better than Mahomes' his first 7 against the Chargers. So
yeah, he's already has a better passer rating. He only has like 600 less passing yards in 3 less games.
And only 6 less touchdowns.
Yeah, so Herbert's that man, bro. Like I know I'm a Chargers fan. That's my quarterback, but he's that dude.
It's gonna be one of those Thursday night games that like it's probably the game of the year. This week, it has a big potential.
I feel like it's gonna be a shootout.
Yeah, like we thought last Thursday was gonna be a good game, and it was just an absolute blowout. The Bills just killed it, but I think this game's gonna be a big shootout. I think so. It's gonna be one of those games that we remember, that Thursday night.
Yeah, like last year.
Yeah, Thursday night football, it started off well so far. A lot of good high quality team. I remember like last year is like
random.
It started. Yeah, it was like the Bucks and Cowboys, and it'd be like, Jags or Titans or but. So far, so good. It's a Thursday night games. A lot of fantasy appeal. A lot of things to look out for.
A lot of fantasy points being scored on Thursdays.
Yeah. So start your lineups early. Get started. Get that early lead on your fantasy opponents this week. Start these guys that we mentioned. And like I said, if we're wrong, we'll tell you guys we're wrong. I told you I totally failed last week with my Thursday night picks. We gave you each 3 stars that we were wrong about in the preseason that went off in week 1. So yeah, I just wanted to give advice, share, and then when we're wrong, like we said, we're not scared to admit it.
Yeah, you'll never be perfect in fantasy. So
yeah, and you never know. Like, it's still week 1. Anything could happen. For all I know, next week Antonio Gibson, Cordarrelle Patterson, and Christian Kirk have bust weeks. And I'm like, see, I told you guys I was right. These guys are not good. Like, I would not trust these guys. Like, do not start them. Like, trade them now. Like, but hey, they can continue. Like, bravo to you for trading them.
Yeah.
I did not draft any of those guys.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that would kind of conclude our episode 7.
Yeah, we'll be back on Saturday.
Saturday, yeah, for another episode. Start you guys off for your Sunday night games. Talk about the Thursday night game and everything. So yeah, we're also going to be a little more active on TikTok and everything like that. So
yeah, we're still planning to go live. It's still in the works, so just keep an eye out for that too.
Yeah, and we'll let you guys know on our social medias. But thank you again for staying around. We appreciate you guys, and yeah, we'll see you on the next one.
Yeah, this is your Big Fat Fantasy, and we're out. See you next episode.